listening to some of my friends from school dance. So I started searching videos on YouTube and I saw everybody was smiling. And I thought, do you know what? I'll give this camp a chance. And I gave that camp a chance. And when I came to Whittier College, right when I stepped out of the bus, it was the most welcoming thing I've ever seen. Counselors were making bridges for kids to go under. Everyone was saying hi, and they're introducing themselves. They were asking me for my name. And I know, I'm 100% sure, next year I'm gonna come back to this camp. And if I don't, I'm gonna try to bring as many people back as possible to tell them this is the best experience of your life. Don't miss out on it like I did.
I've learned just that when you have a hard time in life, that things do get better. And a place like Camp Allende has made me realize that and has definitely made an impact in my heart.
That once you come, you just really, really, really want to come back. And you build friends that you could have never built in any other community or circumstance. Well, I think at first I was very quiet last year, and I think one of the main things I learned here at Camp Allende was to become more outgoing and really believe in myself.
I love Camp Allende. It's my first year and I'm having such a great time. I can't wait to come back next year.
Allende, what comes to mind? Memories, moments that are hard to find. Anywhere else, without compare, my family here will always care. And the atmosphere will always be filled with love and compassion of an honest fashion. And on the last day, I'll shed many a tear. As my dear friend Arton once said, I look forward to this camp 356 days a year.
One of my favorite things is just being in a community full of Iranian Americans and just being together and being able to talk Farsi and other people being able to understand it.
The activities here were awesome. Like we played Vasati, we have all these leadership training. The guest speakers, actually they inspired me a lot. I think I want to keep my Iranian American identity to the fullest. And I just think that the counselors and the campers, they're like helping me become who I am. They're helping me use my Persian identity and use it to the fullest.
خب شما 5 دقیقه بریکتون خوشحال هستید. خیلی ممنون از همه شما عزیزان که امروز اینجا هستین. با سپاس از تمام والنتیرهای خوبمون که کمک میکنن از طرف ایاب، از طرف کامیونیتی پرسن های خوبی که همیشه محبت دارن به ethnic social services referrals و همیشه کمک هستن به ما. با سپاس از آقای سیروس انوری که صبحانه رو برامون پروواید کردن. با سپاس از آقای محمد یوسف زاده که در آوردن و حمل نهار بهمون کمک کردن و با سپاس از همه شما عزیزانی که امروز اینجا هستید. سخنگوی بعدی ما خانم سمر تهرانی هستن که ایشون از دنور کالورادو، در دنور زندگی کردن، در کالورادو بزرگ شدن و امروز اینجا با ما هستن. ایشون لایسنس کانسلر هستن، بیش از 15 سال تجربه دارن و در موقعیت‌های مختلف در ویکتیم سرویسز در کالورادو بودند و کارهای زیادی در این رابطه و در یوت سنترز انجام دادن. ایشون بچلرشون رو در سایکولوژی از متروپولیتن استیت یونیورسیتی آف دنور دریافت کردن. I'm sorry, am I speaking Farsi or English? Forgive me. I'm just used to radio and no one sees me, so I'm very happy there. Anyhow, Summer earned her bachelor degree in psychology from Metropolitan State University of Denver. She furthered her studies, earning a master's degree in educational psychology from the University of Colorado at Denver, and later a postmaster certificate in substance abuse counseling. Samar pursued her passion for empowering individuals through teaching psychology courses in a college setting, while she simultaneously works as a counselor in a private setting, private practice here in Virginia in Arlington. Her passion is to work with individuals tackling life challenges. She's also very interested in working around issues of immigration. She's like most of us, she grew up in bicultural families, and she grew up here, and she had to live with her parents and suffer like suffer like the rest of our second generations. So I'm glad you're here. Welcome, Samar Tehrani. She's our next
there for a second. I thought I had to start speaking Farsi. Thank you for coming. Thank you for spending your Sunday with us today. I guess I'm going to talk about Aberoo. One of those double-edged sword concepts that I think most of us still don't know why we use it and how we use it. So earlier when we were talking about this conference, Dr. Habibpour said you can't talk about virginity, and I said fine, I'll switch the word to purity. But how is it that we can talk about Aberoo and not talk about women's issues as far as virginity in our culture, right? But I won't. I just want to make sure, Ehsan, we can keep our business relationship and I can still refer clients to you. So it's a tough act to follow Mona and Dr. Habibpour, and they've done a great job of talking about different issues present in our culture today, and how it is that we learn to assimilate to a new life here in our host countries, which for most of us is the United States. When the topic of the conference was presented, I do most of my work late at night. I'm like a typical Iranian. I have to stay up all night, sleep during the day. It's crazy, So it's a nice thing that I teach because my classes are in the afternoon. But one night on Google, I just did a simple Aberoo Google search, and 22,000 hits showed up. And I thought, we don't deal with this issue at all, do we? So we have a lot of music lyrics. A lot of our musicians have sang about the issue. Poetry is huge in our culture, very relevant to the issues, cultural issues, emotional issues that we deal with. And most of our movies and our sitcoms and our media have at least used the word Aberoo, and I counted several, one of them, between 5 to 30 times the word is used in our movies or sitcoms that are longer than 30 minutes. So this is truly an issue that impacts the everyday life of Iranians, at least. We also have both cultural and linguistic research. Actually, there have been a lot of Iranians and non-Iranians, interestingly enough, at least by the name of the published researchers, who have tackled the issue of Aberoo. Both males and females have talked about it. And interestingly enough, we're not the first conference on the issue. The Jewish community in California earlier this year presented the same conference on the concept of Aberoo. So we're not pioneers, our next topic, right? So most of you are familiar with Fereydun Farrokhzad, and I'm going to attempt to do some justice, but listen to what he had to say in one of his musics that he wrote himself about the Padishah. This is going to be very difficult because it's in Farsi. با من ای هموطن سخن مرا بگو در دل هر سخن ادب مرا بگو ارز ما را ببر به سراسر جهان ما که جان می‌دهیم به بهای آبرو. And when you think about so as you can tell, I've done a lot of Google search to figure out, how we use Aberoo, but really relevantly, the issue of Aberoo, the word itself means water over the face. So when you talk about water and the face is the representation of the self, and water is something that we can either wash something away with, bring something about, or if it's a swamp, then it's still water that sits there and it's not such a pleasant texture. So Aberoo, and here's another quote, Aberoo is about letting go of ourselves for the sake of others. We Iranians live with a very complicated existential and culturally influenced concept called Aberoo. The term in Persian is synonymous to the concept of the face, and even phrases such as Aberrizi is a metaphor that shows similarly between vilifying and defaming others and shedding their blood. So my understanding of the word, after I've done quite a bit of research on the issue, is that the word is an action word. The word is an action word, and we use it in a sense to either stop a behavior or as an attempt to have someone pursue a behavior. So either do this, ke aberumun nare, so go ahead and move along with this type of behavior. With Iranians, it's normally about don't have sex, get an education, make a lot of money, buy that BMW, all of that. And then, in kara ro nakon ke aberumun nare, right? So we're constantly talking about that mask and actually who we are not in reality, right? Linguistically, when I looked at the word, we have Aberoo is not an Arabic-rooted word, however, adab is. And the reason that we use adab is for relaxation and comfort of our guests. Okay, so we are a very guest-hosting culture, You don't have enough food to eat yourself, don't worry about it, go ahead and boil the eggs for your guests, we'll go hungry tonight, right? So we like, our culture very much is in tune with making others happy, them before us, right? I mean, I remember as a child, my mom would say things like, "In zarfa ro istefade nakon baro mehmune," right? So, and I would use those dishes and I would chip them on purpose because I wanted to use them because, why is the mehmun more important than I, right? That type of a concept. And then imagine growing up in America. Like, the mehmun is so not important, you don't even have to offer them water. Who cares? They wanted to come over, right? And they're inconveniencing my time that I could be spending with my friends. Those huge Iranian parties. So the word ba-adab and bi-adab are used, so ba-adab is aberoo dashtan, bi-adab is aberoo bordan, right? And these two words, we use them constantly. I've tried to kind of tackle how often I think about this word in the past month as I've started to do my research, and also how often I use it. I actually use the word, which is a horrible, really, word to use. It's just such a vague word, and it just gives such a horrible feeling. But really, what is ba-adab and what is bi-adab? When we talk about adab, we're talking about our core belief systems. Our core belief systems are units of our understanding, our perception that comes from our families, it comes from our culture, and it also comes from the culturation that we had while we were growing up. Who am I is my core belief system, right? And our families are responsible mostly as far as political beliefs, faith-based beliefs, and socialization beliefs that they give us. So the direct correlation of the concept of the face is Aberoo, and this is my understanding from the research that has been done on this topic. Defacing, losing face, and keeping face. So defacing is an action word towards others, so that is Aberoo bordan, Aberoo to mibaram, right? So do not do this, I will deface you publicly, right? It is very interesting because when we talk about the face, we are talking about either bringing someone about or taking them away, right? But really it's the fear of not being loved, not being wanted, not being respected, all of the things that the human, it craves for, okay? Losing face is actions towards the self. So that is Aberoom raft, or Aberoo raftan, right? So we stop ourselves from certain behaviors. Again, it's an action word, right? From doing or partaking in certain behaviors so that we keep the face, the mask that's actually, in fact, not true about who we really are, right? And then keeping the face, protection of the self behaviors, right? And that's Aberoo nare. Okay, and that's also, again, this may be very silent. This is the stuff that we sweep under the rug. These are our monsters that we, hide in a closet and we close the door and we say, as long as you stay there, you don't come out and Aberoo man publicly nemire, right? So, and so why do we do all of this? Well, humans live in pursuit of happiness, okay? None of us are here because we want to be unhappy, okay? None of us really do many things in order to be unhappy. In fact, we go buy that purse, we do buy that car, we socialize with people that we may really not like, but we do all of this stuff in pursuit of happiness, that education that we get, or certainly furthermore, happiness creates an equilibrium and balance for us, an emotional balance. When we are in a state of disequilibrium, we release more stress hormones, our behaviors change, the brain does not think correctly, and the only reason is because we're in pursuit of that balance again, okay? So what does this really, Karen Horney, she's one of, in my opinion, one of the gods of the field of psychology who, publicly went against Freud about his penis envy, And I have to apologize to you because I will use a couple of profanity words in my presentation, so I'll apologize in advance about it. And so she says that unhappiness is living up to a false sense of self. And think about this, this phrase, a false sense of self. What is a false sense of self, right? When we talk about a false sense of self, we're talking in fact about issues and behaviors that we take part in, stories that we tell, that we have a tendency to almost believe them because we've told them so many times that in fact are not true about who we really are, right? A friend of mine about the conference, she said, I saw the posting of the conference, but they said that, they said, doctor, I didn't realize you got your PhD, and I said, I haven't even started yet. I quickly got on the phone with Gelerjun. I said, Gelerjun, could you please correct this in the next, publishing of the paper, because it's a false sense of self, right? So, if people keep referring to me as a doctor and I don't correct it and I don't come back and say it, then I can have that false sense of self, and maybe it's silent, let people think what they think, or maybe it can be very public that I start to address myself as one. Right? Things that I am not, right? And all the bad feelings that it silently brings as far as maybe that fight or flight response of maybe when I see people who know I'm not, but I'm being addressed this way, right? The feelings of anxiety, the feelings of fleeing the moment, right? So that's Karen Horney that talks about this a bit. So we have, as far as a fight or flight response, we respond differently between the two genders, males versus females. Men have a tendency to respond with aggression and fighting. Okay, so that's the fight response. And it's because our biologies are a bit different from one another. And women have a tendency to do the flee. And that is the flight. So what we do is we negotiate, or we try to diffuse situations, calm situations down, using our verbal, our language skills. And again, we do this in order to bring harmony and equilibrium back into the state of self, so that we can calm down again. So after I did much of this research, and I'll share with you a personal story towards the end of my talk, if there's a little bit of time. But I came to the understanding that this concept of Aberoo, the word that we use, and we use it, so nonchalantly, like چرا اینو پوشیدی آبرومو بردی چرا اون کار کردی آبروم رفت on a smaller scale. And then furthermore, you know, when we are talking about addiction, when we are talking about sexuality, when we are talking about mental health illness and, you know, and the major issues that we all deal with, you know, because we're all part of the human species, right? So if there's addiction in my family, there probably is addiction in yours. And if there's sexuality issues in my family, there is in yours. However, we all think when we are faced with these issues that they're ours and no one should know and we should sweep it under the rug and not talk about it and hope that one day it'll go away on its own, and it never really does, right? Well, it's a self-destroying concept. That's what I came to terms with. That every time we use it, we create anxiety, depression, separation, addiction, suicide. That's what we do, okay? Because the concept itself, right? I feel like I'm getting a little heavy on a Sunday morning. But the concept itself is a destructive sense of using language that creates, you know, that may lead to these issues, okay? And inevitably it becomes a negative psychological circle, inevitably. Because how could it not be, you know, when we use it? So then we have to talk about morality a little bit. And morality in most cultures, and certainly in ours, are when we move away from norms of society, we start to have morality issues, right? Homosexuality, addiction, AIDS, depression, mental illness, divorce, right? And these become more moral issues for us, okay? And they're deep. And they are, and they're concepts that we would prefer not to talk about because remember that sense of equilibrium, you know, we mess with it. So we like to be calm and we like to be in a relaxed state, and these topics are tough topics. Earlier, about a year and a half ago, I was presented by a group of Iranians and I said, I'd like to talk about addiction. And they said, no, well, we don't have addiction in our community. And I said, are you kidding me? We are the #1 leaders of this issue in the world, mind you. And that is behind Afghanistan, who is, you know, trying to, you know, catch up with us. We don't have issues of addiction in our community, but whatever, fine. What would you like me to talk about? Happiness. Let me talk about happiness, right? So when we use the word Aberoo, we do a few things. And one of the things that it does is that we stop the conversation, right? We can't, what else are we going to talk about, okay? So we stop communication, we stop the brain from problem solving, which really, it leads us to separation and loneliness. That's what we do, okay? And in that, there's a reason that we do this, because we have a fear, okay? And this is kind of a cliquey thing that we have to kind of understand. And that fear is being faced with being defaced, okay? So coming up to a situation or issue that will deface us, it actually will show people who we really are, right? So that fear actually drives the feelings of shame. So Aberoo is an action word, shame is a feeling word, okay? Shame says, and this is where I will use profanity, my dad suggested this morning I choose another word, and I said, do you have another one? He said, I don't. I said, all right, well, I don't either. You speak better Farsi than I do. Shame says, I am bad. What's new? When we are faced with the feelings of shame, we're faced with that concept of darkness, separation, loneliness. Let me go to my corner. Let me not wake up. Let me separate myself from my family, people who love me, my society, right? It's loneliness. And it's really kind of that concept of I'd rather not be here than be here, okay? It's kind of the ultimate, okay? Guilt, on the other hand, is a healing word, because if I have done so shame is go khordan. You know, like you do something and, you know, and they say go khordi. Well, you know, I mean, quite frankly, once you've had it, I mean, you can't spit it back up, right? So it's that ultimate, right? However, guilt, on the other hand, is اشتباه کردی. So think about the two terms, right? اگه من اشتباه کردم, if I've made in fact a mistake, there is an opportunity for healing here, okay? There's an opportunity for healing, forgiveness, and it leads me to correct that behavior, okay? So see, we open the door to communication, problem solving, okay? So the difference between shame and guilt in relations to Aberoo, okay? So one term, the go خوردن will lead us to loneliness, self-destructive behaviors, and self-harming. While on the other side, اشتباه کردن, problem solving, healing actions, being able to show the face. I no longer have to go hide in my corner because guess what? I can come back and correct it. Okay? I can come back and ask for forgiveness. I can come back and be part of the community that loves me, and in return I love them back. I don't need to resort to addiction, suicide, separation. I can still be here because I can be forgiven. Okay? So let's talk about second and third generation Iranians and this double-edged sword. We use this concept of Aberoo, or our parents used it with us. I remember when my dad or my mom would say things like, "In karo nakon, aberoomon raft, shalwarato sag nakon." I'm the generation that I was a teenager in my 80s, so I definitely, wore the bandanas and sagged my pants, and my mom would constantly move around and say, "Shalwarato bekesh bala, shalwarato bekesh bala, aberoomon raft." And so second and third generation Iranians, we heard this word. It was used so often, and guess what we did? And guess what we do? We dish it back to you on a silver platter, okay? What we do is we say, injuri harf nazan, it's not vodka, it's vodka. It's whiskey nis baba, it's whiskey, Injuri nagu, unjuri. It's the concept of Aberoo, right? Don't speak in front of people, you have an accent, okay? So we dish it right back. And that feeling, that horrible feeling that I've received all these years, guess what? I'm going to give it right back to you. Because it's the concept of evolutionary psychology. In evolutionary psychology, we say evolution happens and we grow and we move and we assimilate and we socialize to the norms of contemporary life, right? Well, listen, the word didn't change. My grandparents used it. My parents used it, my older siblings used it, I use it, and probably my children will use it as well. We just use it in different context. Okay? So maybe what was a big deal to my grandparents as far as Aberoo is no longer relevant in the contemporary life today. Okay? And if that's not relevant, then that means that terminology has changed, but what hasn't changed is that communication of the bad feeling that you are in fact bad because what you did Aberoo mano bord. Okay? So see how it gets dished back and forth? It's like that rice without the saffron on top. It doesn't smell so good anymore. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? 10 minutes. All right. Each 3-hour-long classes. Half an hour is like not enough time to talk. All right, so let's talk about core belief systems and the basis of the reason why we use such terminology. Okay, and I mentioned core belief systems a bit earlier today in my talk. Our core belief systems comes from the belief of how we are raised, how we're cultured, where we grew up, how we grew up, socioeconomic status, the schools we attended, the faith-based communities we were a part of. And all of these systems give us a sense of ideas and beliefs. And we grow up with them and we may change them or tweak them a little bit or we may in fact stick with them. But it is in fact those core belief systems that lead us to use such words as Aberoo. Okay? And the concept of defacing or keeping face or losing face or whatnot, okay? Because it's based on those belief systems that we behave and act, okay? Or we actually stop ourselves from doing such, okay, behaving or acting. So I think mostly in a in a culture like ours, that we are immigrants, or we're raising first and second generation Iranians, it's important to talk about these core belief systems. It's actually really important to open these issues up a little bit and start to have discussions, and maybe revisit them, and maybe talk about how those core belief systems may not be relevant to our contemporary lives today here in exile, right? Because the fact that I couldn't bring a boyfriend home, when I was a teenager, that was the issue of my generation, with growing up with older parents who came from Iran, in their elderly age. That's not the issue of my child's generation today. So how do we open these topics up and talk about them, and talk about how they are in fact relevant to today's contemporary life that we live, or how they may have changed, okay? We are a collectivist culture that lives in an individualistic culture, and this is extremely important for us to understand. Here in the US, my actions and my behaviors and my belief systems are my own. Okay? Nobody else is responsible for them. Okay? In Iran and in a collective culture, my actions and my belief systems and my behaviors affect my family and my community. So see, we behave according to that idea. Okay? And these two constantly clash with one another. Okay, I'm an individual. I want to live my life the way I want it because, I identify as an American Iranian. And what I mean by that is my thought process first thinks American, and then tries to understand the Iranian part and think, am I going to Aberoo bebaram or Nabaram, or what the heck am I really doing with this thing of Aberoo, right? But first I'm thinking American. That's where my nature goes. That's where my head first goes, okay? And then I have to think about, how is this going to affect my family? How is this going to affect my sisters? How is it going to affect their children? Right? Because it's a collective viewpoint, because that's how I grew up. Those are my core belief systems. And imagine how much that clashes, in fact, with a system that says you're an individual, you own your own, behaviors, right? So I'm constantly this kind of dance of going back and forth. If you can imagine when you try to go through a door and there's somebody coming and you just kind of do this. Well, I grew up doing this for the past 28 years, okay? Because what it is that it gives me that sense of self-protection, okay? That equilibrium. As long as I do this, maybe I shouldn't say anything in front of my family. As long as they don't know, I'm okay with it. Self-protection. Now, if they find out, I better think quick on my toes to have a good explanation, and really think about one of my American friends who made me do it that they don't know, who doesn't exist, right? So, so in this kind of dishing it back and forth, and as I prepared for this, I had a lot of guilt because I started to think about how I used this word Aberoo with my parents. Furthermore, how did I use it with my grandma? And I remember specifically, I had a little dog, and my grandma would go around the house touching stuff with a paper napkin. So I would say, Grandma, my friends are coming over. Can you not do that in front of them? Silently dishing back the Aberoo stuff to her. I wouldn't use the word, but I would just imply it. And she would say, oh, Madar, man namaz mikhunam. And I'm like, it's okay, you can just wash your hands after, right? So this dishing it back to them and this double-edged sword, I guess in closing, what I want to say is, I think if we become, aware by these types of topics and conversations that we publicly, involve ourselves with, what I would like from my talk today, I guess for you to walk away with, is that before you use it, think about the impacts of the emotional behavior, the emotional sense and emotion, I guess, that you are implying on the next person who is in receive of it, right? And I have done quite a bit of work around shame and vulnerability, quite a bit of work around it. I'm very interested in this shaming stuff that's very, very relevant, not just in our culture, but in every culture that has been looked at, with this research. And shame has been, and I don't remember who quoted this, but it's stuck in my head, if this is not the swampland of the soul. Okay, so just think about the swampland of the soul. And it never really, I heard it, and I tried to play with it, and obviously it's something that I've gotten myself caught up with, thinking about it more and more every day. But when I started to do this Aberoo research, I thought that word is the swampland of the soul. That word, in fact, is the swampland of the soul, because imagine how horrible and how awful it has made us feel time and time over again. When I really wanted to do something because I desired it, and I didn't do it because of my Aberoo. And and now hindsight, I wish I had done it, right? Or that horrible feeling that I've behaved and I've acted, now I have to mask it and not be who I am. And not be, who in fact I want to be, because I have to preserve the Aberoo of my family. Honor. Okay. So I didn't want this to be such a tough topic of talk, but I think it is important, certainly if we have an audience, to really talk about these issues and open them up. And I invite you to talk about, when you sit at your dinner table, rather than talking about that last car you bought, or the purse that you really desire, or the last trip that you took and how great the next one's going to be, all the things that we talk about in order not to talk about the tough topics, open these issues up at your dinner table and actually talk about them. So am I out of time? Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samar John. It was wonderful. Thanks to all of you for being here. We have kind of a work lunch for you. We have questions on our lunch tables that we would like you to get to know your table mates, talk about the issues, and then bring all of your questions with you after lunch. We're going to have a panel discussion, and we would love to hear from all